Hello everybody, Professor Reese back with you with African American history. Remember last time we talked about the transatlantic slave trade and the diaspora. So we learned how slaves were ported to different parts of the world. And then we talked about the diaspora, which dispersed slaves all over the world. So when I see an Asian American that looks like me, what am I thinking? Diaspora. When I see somebody from the United Kingdom that looks like me, what am I thinking? Diaspora. When I see a Brazilian American that looks like me, what are we thinking? You tell me. You're absolutely correct, diaspora. So today we're going to talk about the slavery in the Americas. Now we've come to the Americas, and let's address slavery right here in the good old USA. Slavery in the Americas was a horrific institution. And when I say institution, what I mean by that is it was a way of life. They used us to work from sunup to sundown, to plant, to do everything that they would not do or did not want to do. Real picture here of slaves back in right about 1800s or so. As you can see, one of the resources that they have picked here is cotton. Slaves were traded, slaves were sold. They were what you call chattel slavery. And what I mean by that, the word chattel means that a human being actually owns another human being and their offspring. So when I go to the store and I buy one of my favorites, gummy bears, I own it, right? Yeah, because I purchased it. And if I decide I don't want the gummy bears, I can toss them away. I go to the store and buy my bag of Takis. I saw your eyes light up when I said Takis. It's one of my kids' favorite treats that I keep in the classroom. But I bought the Takis, so I now own them. But I have decided, I don't want them right now. I might trade them for later. So in chattel slavery, that's how we were done. We were bought, sold, and traded. So this is a slave quarters. It's where we were allowed to live on the plantation's property. This is a better looking slave quarters than most. Most of them did not even have doors. Some had windows, some not, but it was pretty impoverished conditions for us. Now let's talk a little bit about the country and how we were divided. We were divided into territories and states. Everybody was not a state yet. This map represents, in red, all of the slave states. If you notice, most of them, in this deeper red here, if you notice that most of them was in the South, right? A lot of our free states are in the light blue. Free territories, because Kansas was not a state yet, was a free territory. Nebraska, Oregon, Washington. So those are the states that are coming up north. I found it amazing that Missouri was a slave state, but Kansas was not, seeing as though they border on one another. So this is the layout of the country. In 1789, you can see the numbers here, 8 slave states. Then as it progressed, we got up to 15. And then we had free states. We started at 5 and then progressed into latter numbers. Now, when you have a country, that's divided like this, what do you typically have? There you go. We typically have strife and war that divides a country because the country was really already divided in what their beliefs were. So this divide was called the Civil War, but we're not going to go into that yet. We're going to back it up, and then we'll touch a little bit on that at another time. So there were people that did not believe in slavery that were on our side. These were called abolitionists. Abolitionists coming from the word abolish, which means they wanted slavery to end. They did not believe in the institution. You see the quote, which I love, "The soul that is within me, no man can degrade." Can't anybody take from you what's inside? If you have a belief, then you fight for it, right? You stand up for it. So these abolitionists, along with us, fought for what we believed was right. Okay, number one on my hit list. And me and my students or my scholars divide the hit list on who we thought deserved number one. And we're looking at Mr. Frederick Douglass. And he's number one for a couple of reasons. Here's the fun fact for you. Did you know that Black History Month, one of the reasons it's in the month of February was because of Frederick Douglass. He knew that he was born in February. He didn't know the year. He didn't know the exact date. But folks, this is one of the reasons that we celebrate Black History Month in the month of February. Here's a quote by Douglass. You have seen how a man was made a slave. Now you shall see how a slave was made a man. We're going to get around to it in class where we're going to actually read a narrative by Frederick Douglass. It's a slave narrative where slaves wrote about their experience on plantations throughout slavery. Of course, Douglass was a slave, so the slave narrative was a very, very powerful piece when it came to convincing America and others that we were meant to be more than a slave. And what Douglass meant by this quote was in his narrative, he was on one of the many plantations that he lived on when he finally decided from within, I'm not going to take this anymore. He's getting ready to beat me again. I'm going to finally stand up and defend myself. He did, and he was made a man from that day on. No more cowardice, no more anything. I'm going to be free. And I'm no longer going to take what they choose to give me. Number two on our hit list, Harriet Tubman. But of course, Harriet Tubman, very, very famous in that she made 13 or more trips where she took slaves to freedom. It was called the Underground Railroad. And what that Underground Railroad signified basically was this was a path, sort of, or a way for slaves to escape, get to abolitionists or individuals who would help them obtain their freedom. Number three on the hit list, Sojourner Truth. Love her name. Sojourner Truth was born into slavery. She was one of the only slaves, back it up a little bit, she escaped slavery with her daughter. But she was one of the only slaves that actually took her owner, her white owner or master, to court for custody of her son, who she had left behind. And guess what, folks? She won. Another inspiring thing about Sojourner Truth is that she helped enlist over 200,000 or so slaves to fight in the Civil War or for the Union. Number four, John Brown. Now, all abolitionists weren't necessarily people of color. There were some that believed in the cause, just like there's good and bad people in every race, in every scenario. Okay, John Brown. He really believed in God and what he felt Christianity represented. He was more of a moral man than he was anything else. So, based on his morals, he felt that slaves deserved to be free. So, he had dreams, visions that he was actually going to be a messenger for God, or a messenger to bring slavery, these individuals out of slavery, slaves out of slavery. So what he did, he led a insurrection, mob of people that attacked Harper's Ferry. Now what that was an arsenal. So you had weapons that were given to slaves. Him, along with his sons, was part of, well, he was the leader of this thing, but him along with his sons stood side by side with slaves and attacked the arsenal. They did fairly good. I think he had maybe 50 to 70 folks with him. They did fairly good, but eventually the white militia was brought in and John Brown was captured along with his sons, and he was hung. Hit list. Harriet Beecher Stowe. Small lady in stature, she wrote a very, very powerful narrative that they're still studying in school today. It's called Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was a book that actually told about the human condition of slavery, enslavement, and the characters kind of just jump up off the page. We've got good old Uncle Tom, who is a pious Christian individual. We have many, many characters that she wrote about in her book. She says actually the characters were real life people that other people knew about and that she had met. On her way to Kentucky, she didn't necessarily believe in slavery, but on her way to Kentucky, she saw how bad slaves were treated. And Harriet decided, this can't be right. So I'm going to write about this. And she did, and did a very good job of it. She wanted to bring slavery into the forefront. Also, Harriet's, one of her mandates was parents should not be separated from their children. And in slavery, we know that was a big part of the institution. You break a human spirit when you take somebody's child. We want you to be what we want you to be, and the way to do that is to break the spirit. So Harriet, she had a son, I believe, that died of cholera. And so she felt some kind of way about parents being separated from their children. So Harriet Beecher Stowe, when she met Abraham Lincoln, he said, oh, okay, you're the little lady that caused the Civil War. Last on the hit list is William Lloyd Garrison. William Lloyd Garrison made the list because he published the first newspaper called The Liberator that talked about slavery, and it tried to pull on the heartstrings of whites to release the enslaved. You need to feel some kind of way about it. So he worked very closely, with Frederick Douglass, as well as with John Brown, William Lloyd Garrison. Okay, so those are our top abolitionists. You know, as always, we end with an African proverb. And our proverb for today is, our children may learn about the heroes of the past. Our task is to make ourselves architects of the future. That's all for the day. Today, we'll be talking about rebellions next time. Hope to see you then. Thanks for tuning in.